Creating a click-worthy thumbnail is one of the most important parts of YouTube. It's what will catch people's attention and get them to click on the video. So for today's video, I want to show you my process from start to finish of how I create my YouTube thumbnails. First, I want to talk about some general thumbnail tips and things that I've learned over the year. You don't want to make your thumbnail look too cluttered. It doesn't need a ton of information on it. You want it to look simple, clean, and easy to be understood at a glance. If you think about the way your viewers see thumbnails, they're going to be really small and sitting next to a bunch of other thumbnails. So you want yours to grab attention and not blend into the background with the other 10 or so thumbnails that it's going to be placed next to. People will see your thumbnails in a few places. On their homepage, in the sidebar, after a video is done, and if they went directly to your profile looking for a video. Your thumbnail and video is going to be competing for attention in all of those places, and it's going to be really small. Let's say you are creating a thumbnail in Canva. This is what it's going to look like full size, but what your viewers are actually going to see is something about this small. If we drop this down to about 20%, maybe even a little bit less than that, this is what your viewers are actually going to see when they are viewing your thumbnail. Because if we go to my profile here, you can see how big the thumbnail actually is. So between 15 and 20%, maybe about that big is how big your thumbnail is actually going to be to your viewer. And you can do this when you are creating your thumbnails. Create them at full size and then drop them down to be roughly the same size as the thumbnail here and ask yourself, is this readable? Does this have the same impact small like this as it did full sized? If the answer is no, you may want to change some things. You also want to make sure that each thumbnail is unique. Now that doesn't mean that they need to be drastically different from one thumbnail to the next. It's okay for them to look cohesive. It'll make your YouTube page look branded, and it'll be easier for your viewers to pick out your thumbnail in the feed if you have a similar style to them. However, if you have the same facial expression, the same background, the same type of text on every single thumbnail, it's going to be hard for them to distinguish what video is new and what one they've seen before. For example, if we look at these three videos that I've done right here about a year ago, looking at them up close and right next to each other, it's clear that they are three different videos. However, chances are your viewers are not going to go to your page and look at your videos this way. They're going to see them in suggested or other places on YouTube. So if they see these videos separate of each other one at a time, they may think that they're the same video and end up skipping right past them. So don't be afraid to change up your thumbnails. This next tip kind of only goes for those of us that put ourselves in our thumbnails. This will mean something different to channels that are faceless. You want to make sure that you convey an emotion in your thumbnail, and one of the best ways to do that is with facial expressions. Your thumbnail tells a story or gives a sneak peek of the video, or you could say it's a thing that draws your viewer in and makes them want to click and learn more. If your thumbnail is subpar or doesn't depict any emotion, it might not do that well. Now you may think that I mean you have to do the typical shocked YouTuber face in every single one of your thumbnails, but that's not what I mean. You sometimes don't need an over-exaggerated facial expression in your thumbnails. For example, let's take a look at one of the videos I just recently posted on my channel. This video right here is about Canva basics. Now there wasn't anything overly shocking or exciting about this video. It was literally just Canva basics for beginners. So I didn't put an over-exaggerated face on that thumbnail because it didn't need it. But you could say something down here like 6 huge reasons you're not growing on Pinterest. I put a little bit more of a shocked face on the thumbnail because I put 6+ months on it, implying that it would take 6+ months for you to grow on Pinterest. And that's a little bit shocking, spending that much time on a platform before you grow. So I put a little bit more of a shocked face. One of the other good examples is this thumbnail right here, Scared to Start, 4 tips of overcoming the fear of starting YouTube. I depicted what somebody would look like before they started YouTube, looking kind of like scared and unsure. And then I depicted what somebody would look like after, where they are confidently looking at the camera, smiling and able to record because they're no longer scared about starting YouTube. I like to think about how does the viewer feel when they are watching this video. It's all about the emotions that you want to convey, what you think the viewer might feel before, during, or even after the video is over. One of the other things that I wanted to show you is the results of these thumbnails so that you can see if this method actually works. So if we open this video here that I talked about how to massively improve your Pinterest account, we can see how this video actually did. 274 views, which is 94 more than normal. And this video overall, just in general, did really well. But in terms of the reach and the click-through of the thumbnail, you can see that I got 2.8K impressions on this video, and I got a 6.4% click-through rate. That's about average or good for me. We can also check out this video here, which is my Pinterest account was suspended video. I knew that this one was going to do pretty well, and it did. 1.5K views, which is 710 more than normal in this time. Of course, this video has been out for 143 days, as opposed to this video that looks like it's only been out for 12 days. So of course this one's doing better, but either way, and the reach is 16.7K impressions, which is wild, and a 6.9% click-through rate. People are finding this video mostly through YouTube search and browse features, and even in Google, people are finding this video. As opposed to what I would consider not a very good thumbnail in this video of my affiliate marketing guide. This one has been out for over a year and 53 days. It only has 98 views, and the reach on this video, 1.8K impressions, but the click-through rate is only 2.1%. So you can see that my thumbnail game has gotten a lot better compared to where it was a year ago. You also don't need a lot of words on your thumbnail as well, because again, they're going to be really small. You don't need to put the entire title on there, and you may not even need to use any of the words from your title on your thumbnail. You want your title and your thumbnail to work together. One draws in their attention, which is typically the thumbnail, and the other makes them want to click, which is the title. The point is, each of them serves a different purpose. You also want to be careful where you put the text on your thumbnails as well, because as you can see in my videos, I try to keep the text out of the bottom left-hand corner. And this is because if you do put that there, it might get covered up by the timestamp of all of your videos. I try to put my body or any less relevant information on the right side of the thumbnail and put all of the text or important information on the left side of the thumbnail. This is why in this video here, you can see I have before and after, and the after is slightly put above the before and not perfectly in the corner, because if it was there, it'd be covered up by the timestamp. This is just one thing to think about when you're creating thumbnails. Now let's talk about how I actually create and plan out my thumbnails. It's a bit of a process, but I also have some tips to help you speed it up. I plan out the thumbnail first. Before I even shoot the video, before I even write the script, I have an idea of what my thumbnail is going to look like. This is the sheet that I have all of my YouTube questions answered in it. I've showed you guys this before. And I have a question in here right below what is my video title. That is, what is my thumbnail concept? Now I will do one of two things when I am planning out a thumbnail. I will either write out what I want to be in the thumbnail in terms of the facial expressions, the words, and the poses that I want to use, or I will take my title that I already have planned out up here, type that into YouTube, and I will look at the ranking videos to see thumbnails that I like. Then I will typically take 1 to 2 thumbnails, screenshot them, and paste them directly into my doc so that I can use them as my inspiration. Sometimes I will also write out what I like about one thumbnail or what I didn't like about another thumbnail and what I personally want my thumbnail to look like. This allows me to visualize what my thumbnail is going to look like before I create it, and it makes the process go a lot faster. Next, I will take some thumbnail photos. I typically do this before I shoot the video because otherwise I'm likely to forget. I talked about this process a little bit in my last video about behind the scenes of being a YouTuber. I will typically take about 10 to 15 photos that I can choose from in different poses with different facial expressions, just so that I have options. Even though I already have my thumbnail planned out and I know what it's going to look like, I still like to have those options just in case. It's important to actually take still photos for your thumbnail because that's going to help them look more intentional. You don't want to just take a random screen grab from the middle of your video because that's likely going to be blurry, it's not going to look very intentional, and it might not even be very well lit. One tip I have for you to save a bunch of time is to go through your photos that you've taken and keep the best ones and save them into a folder. I also showed this off in the last video as well, that I have a Canva folder that has a ton of different thumbnails that I can choose from, so that way if I forget to take one, or I don't think the photos I took look very good, or even if I'm updating old thumbnails, I can choose from hundreds of different thumbnail photos to work with. You can also reuse thumbnail pictures as well. For example, if we look at my I quit Etsy picture here, you can see that I'm kind of doing this. If we go down to my tailwind photo, you can see I used the exact same photo. However, I made them look completely different. Now I want to actually take you guys through my process in real time of how I create a thumbnail so that you can see the whole process that I go through. I have this doc here that has a bunch of my old thumbnail photos in them. I also have a few photos here of my office that I like to use as my background, and I'll show you why in a bit. You probably also noticed that they're blurry and they're dark, and the reason for that is I don't find the background of my thumbnails to be that important. I would prefer me, the subject of the video, and the words to be the most standout thing in the thumbnail. You don't necessarily have to do this, that's just something that I did. I'm gonna use this photo here, and then I'm gonna go through these photos and try to find one that I like. I think I'm gonna go with this one here. So I'm gonna use that in a design. It's gonna open a whole new tab, and then I can just cut and paste it right into here. Now, one of the things that you need to be careful of when you are importing other pictures is the fact that they will snap to any grids that you have. So for example, if I move this picture at all, it's going to go and move into the background and essentially delete what picture I had there before. So I need to put in a new grid, position it backwards, and then move this into its own picture box. So now the background is still there as well. This next tool that I want to show you though is one of my absolute favorites in Canva. So I'm going to click on my image. I'm going to hit edit image and go to background remover. Unfortunately, this is a paid for tool, but it is one of my favorites when it comes to creating thumbnail photos. And as you can see, it has erased the background. Sometimes you have to actually go in, select a brush, and erase your background if it doesn't do a very good job. But this one ended up erasing the entire background, so I don't need to worry about that. Click on apply, and I'm actually going to make my background a little bit darker so I can stand out a little better. And then I'm gonna make myself bigger. And this is one of the reasons that I like having a different background, because then I can make myself bigger and the background stays the same, as opposed to blowing up the entire picture. I can just make myself bigger. Now I'm gonna go through and do a little bit of editing on myself so that I stand out just a little bit more. And you can see there is a lot of different things that you can use here. I typically use shadows a lot and these three. This next thing that I'm going to be showing you is probably my second favorite tool when it comes to doing Canva thumbnails. I'm going to show you how I do the white outline behind myself to make me stand out a little bit more. What you need to do is grab your picture and make a copy of it, and then click on edit image, go down here to duotone. You can choose any of these. I typically just choose cherry. It's gonna make yourself red. Click on it again, and you can change the highlights and shadows to any color you want. I typically just change mine to white and then click apply. And as you can see, now you have an outline of yourself in white. I'm gonna take the transparency, drop it down to about 50 so that I can see myself behind the white outline. And then I'm just gonna make it a little bit bigger than myself. That should be okay right there. And now sometimes this works, sometimes this doesn't. So if I click on position and move this backwards, sometimes when you click on edit image, you can see that these are grayed out and you can't use them. It's weird, I don't understand why it happens. So if this does happen to you, what you have to do first, click off the image, click back onto the image, hit edit, see all, and then move the position backwards. I don't understand why it works that way, but it does. And now what I'm gonna do, now that I have this open, I'm gonna put the transparency back up to 100, and I'm gonna blur as much as I feel necessary. Next, if you want to reposition a photo behind a photo, I don't really like where this white outline has been placed. All you have to do is click on your photo, hit Control, and then click again. And now you can see that I'm moving this outline as opposed to moving this front picture. So all you have to do, click on your photo, hit Control, and then click one more time, and now I can move the picture behind it. You don't need to hold Control. Once you have this, you can kind of move it wherever you want. Next, I think I'm gonna look through my thumbnails and grab ones that I can actually put here. And remember what I said, if you're importing any photos, make sure you put them in their own grid, because otherwise they're gonna do this and you're going to lose whatever picture of the grid it snapped to. So I'm just gonna put this in its own grid. Now that I have those in, I think what I wanna do is add a white outline to them. And I actually think I wanna add a black outline to these to make them stand out just a little bit more. So what I'm gonna have to do is duplicate this page, and I'm going to delete everything but these squares here, turn them black, and then share, download current page as a PNG with a transparent background. So essentially what I'm doing here is you can't blur a text box, which is really what I want to do. So I need to save it as a picture, and then I can go back to my thumbnail, add in a new grid, position it to the front, take what I just saved as a picture, put that in here, and then you can see now there is black right here where those images are. I'm going to edit that, see all, position it backwards until it's behind the white, and then I'm going to blur. So it's very subtle, but if you look right here, if I delete this, you can see there's a little bit of a black outline that makes that white pop out just a little bit more. I don't think this thumbnail necessarily needs any words on it. Let me look back at my inspiration thumbnails. Okay, so they had how I make my thumbnails and clickable thumbnails. I think that's a little too many words. I don't want all that on there. Mine is how to make click-worthy thumbnails, but I think I might actually want to add get more views. When I add text into a new thumbnail, I kind of just end up copying and pasting text from an old thumbnail because I already have it set up with layers the way that I want. My text is actually pretty layered. It's not just text drop right onto it. What I mean by that is Toxic Productivity has 2 separate layers to make it pop out just a little bit more. But sometimes, like with this thumbnail, I actually have 1 layer, 2 layer, and 3 layers on my text because it makes it pop out and be readable. For this text, I just have an effect on it called lift, and the intensity is all the way up. And then I have an effect on this one called splice, and there's a bunch of different options that you can change here. And I think this text could actually do with a white outline like I was talking about. So what I'm gonna do is take this text, copy it, put it into here, and then I'm gonna delete that. I'm gonna turn this text white as opposed to black, and I'm going to save this with a transparent background again in order to get a white outline. Put that in there backwards and blur it. And as you can see, very subtle once again, but if I get rid of the blur, you can see it makes the text pop out ever so slightly more, which is what I'm going for here. One last thing I want to add here is an arrow pointing up to one of the thumbnails. So I'm going to take this arrow that I already have from my old thumbnail, copy that. This is one of the reasons that I like having all of my thumbnails in one folder, because then I can take different elements that I've already made and kind of reuse them. And you can see with this arrow, I've done layering as well, where there's a black version of the arrow above the white, which just makes it pop out a little bit more. And I think that is going to be my final thumbnail. If you want a little bit more help in beginner's Canva to find out how I did some of these things, check out this video right here. Make sure to like this video if you liked and subscribe to my channel down below for more videos just like this. And I'll see you next week. Bye!